What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. First off, I wanted to share some exciting news. I finally hit Marshall on my Grandmaster Ice Wizard, and I'm currently the top ice in the league, as well as number 8 overall on the leaderboard. As you can see, there aren't a lot of ices on the leaderboard because it's such an underpowered school at the moment, so I thought it might be a good idea to go over some gear and deck builds for anyone out there wanting to try ice PvP. Alright, so first off I'm going to go over some viable gear sets for PvP, and then I'll move on to the deck builds, but firstly I'll go over the free-to-play gear that will afford you the best chance to compete against other players with pack gear. But to be honest, if you're serious about doing ice PvP, I'd save yourself the time and frustration by upgrading to non-free-to-play gear set that I'm also going to go over. So starting off, we have the Spider Keeper's Ice Mantle, which is dropped by Malastair himself, or as of the recent update, can now be crafted, although I've heard it can be quite difficult to craft. Next up is the Malastair's Ice Flame Tunic, which can also be acquired by Malastair and crafted. Next are the Snow Crusher's Snow Stompers, which, similar to the robe and hat, you can get from Malastair or craft them. Alright, for the wand, we have the Long Blade of the Homunculus, and you guessed it, Malastair drops this wand, or you can craft it. You can also get it from the Dragonspire World Pack for 600 crowns, but that seems like a scam to me personally, so I recommend farming or crafting it. Next up is the Gurtok Chill Blade, which drops from the Ice Gurtok Demon in the Malastair dungeon. It can also be crafted or bought from the Dragonspire World Pack. Next up is the Amulet, in which I'd say the best is the Sun's Piercing Ray. You can buy this with gold from a vendor in Australian named Ithun Longstrider, but he also drops a lot of other meta amulets that you can experiment with if you'd like. For the ring, I'd go for the Gurtok Celsius Band, which can be acquired from the Fire Gurtok Demon in Malastair's dungeon, crafted or bought from the Dragonspire World Pack. For pets, I strongly recommend the Blimp Buddy, so that you have the best shot of winning Bubble Wars. If you're running any Ice Lore spells, I definitely recommend running the pet with Ice Sniper, but if not, you could run the pet on the right, which is supposed to have an Armor Breaker jewel there, so just pretend it does. And for the mounts, I'd recommend the Rock Mount, which can be farmed from a few different bosses, but I'd recommend farming Metalosis in the Sinbad Gauntlet, or bought from the Sinbad Horde Pack. I promise there is nothing worse than pip failing when you're about to finish off your opponent, so highly recommend that one. And lastly, for the deck, you have two options. If you manage to be Warlord in any age of PvP before 5th age and bought the Card of the Duelist deck, you can socket an Accuracy or Pip Jewel, which can be good, or you can easily acquire the Snow Crusher Ice Block box for free from the Dragonspire boss Victor Snow Crusher. Both are incredibly viable options, so it's entirely up to you. Alright, so with the free-to-play gear, this is roughly what your stats are going to look like. Of course, the pet, deck, and mount you choose will influence these stats, but you're going to have around 3,600 health, 79 damage, and 34 universal resist, and 26 accuracy if you run the Ice Sniper pet that I showed before, which means you won't be fizzling even Ice Lore spells. The only spell you'll be able to fizzle is the 0-pip Ice Stun, but other than that, you'll be good. You'll also have 10% Pierce, 70% pip chance with the Rock Mount, and 56 Arch Mastery rating with the Snow Crusher's deck. Again, this is just a rough estimate of what your stats will look like, so as to help give you a baseline to use for personalizing your build for the playstyle that you choose to use. Next up, I'll show the best gear in my opinion for Ranked Ice Grandmaster PvP. So first and foremost, the Malastair hat actually has some incredibly good stats, on par, or I'd say better than the pack gear in my opinion. Plus, the extra bubble it gives is a huge bonus. So for the robe, you have two options, and they are incredibly close to each other in value, that I don't think you could go wrong choosing either one. But those two robes are the Icy Nightmare Coat from the Nightmare pack, and the Great Inventor's Ice Coat from the Novus Explorers pack. I personally prefer the Nightmare Coat for the sole purpose that it gives a little more damage than the Inventor's Coat, and since my ice playstyle is more aggressive, I prefer to play with extra damage. However, the Inventor's Coat does offer 82 more health and a little bit of ice and life accuracy. But as you'll see later with the Nightmare Robe build, you'll have 26 accuracy anyways, which is plenty so that extra 1% ice accuracy isn't necessary in my opinion, but that 3% life accuracy may help with not fizzling satyrs as much, but it is entirely up to you. I also really like the minus 85 death shield that comes with the Nightmare robe versus the Camp Bandit spell that comes with the Inventor's robe. The extra death shield has definitely saved my life more than once, and 5 pips for Camp Bandit just doesn't seem that valuable to me personally, when you can just train meditation from the life school instead for 3 pips to get rid of overtime damage on you. So for the boots, you should definitely get Lydia's Frozen Foot Wraps, which you can get from the Professor's Horde Pack. You'll see most people running their school's version of these boots. There isn't really anything that comes close to them. What sets these boots apart from other pack boots is that they give an insane amount of pip chance, which is very important in Grand PvP. And for the wand, the Malastair wand gives just so much pierce and ice damage, which is, again, I mean, obviously really good. Plus, it gives an extra death shield, ice trap, and ice wand hits, which are important for shield breaking against both ice shields and tower shields. Alright, next you'll want the Icy Nightmare Aethum, which comes from the Nightmare pack. You definitely want these jewels socketed for optimized stats as well, especially if you plan on running the strat that I'll be going for in a bit. So for the amulet, the Sun's Piercing Ray works best for my aggressive playstyle, and that extra Pierce card definitely helps with breaking towers or ice shields, while also retaining buffs like blades and traps. And again, the vendor for this amulet is in Osterland. And for the ring, I recommend the Great Inventor's Ice Ring because it gives you some extra health and 2 extra pip chance, which I think is worth sacrificing for 1 damage, since I hate pip failing. I don't have it shown here, but the Icy Nightmare Ring is basically the same as this Gertok Celsius band, except it gives more health and retains that 1% damage if you prefer to have that over the 2% power pip chance. For the pet, again, I highly recommend the Blimp Buddy, which unfortunately is not in the kiosk, so you'll need to find someone to hatch with, or you can get it from the Marleybone Motorist pack. For my pet, I run Armor Breaker, Pain Giver, Spellproof, Ice, Sniper, Ice Dealer, and I socket Spell Defy. Optimally, you'd want the Brace Defy Kroger Jewel, which I don't have because the code can only be redeemed in July, but basically this jewel gives you a chance of randomly casting the Brace Aura spell, in addition to giving you Spell Defy, which could help you win some games. However, I was able to get to Marshall without it. As previously stated, I still really prefer the Rock Mount over the other stat mounts, since pip failing is the absolute bane of my existence, but other viable mounts, like the Clockwork Courser or the Ice Sculpture, could work, since the Courser gives 2% pierce, and the Ice Sculpture gives an extra 3% damage. And lastly for the deck, although both options are really good, I prefer the Snow Crushers deck over the Cards of the Duelist. Losing that extra 4% pip chance hurts a little bit, but with the Snow Crushers deck, you're getting 4 extra spots of main deck space, an extra copy for ice spells, 6 extra space in your sideboard, and plus for the strat that I use now, the Archmastery pips are necessary for casting lore spells. So with all that gear on that I just mentioned, you'll have a little under 3.8k health, which is just a ton of health for Grand PvP. You'll also have 78 damage, which is well below the damage cap of 87, unfortunately, but we're supposed to be the lowest damage school, so that makes sense. To compensate, you will have 37 resist to most schools, with some added resist to Ice, Storm, and Death. One thing to note is that the resist is hard capped at 35, which means that any resist over 35 is essentially ignored. However, the devs confirmed that Pierce is applied before the resist cap is taken into account, so the extra resist won't be meaningless. You'll be able to take open shots better, which unfortunately do happen sometimes. But say, for example, if the Pierce from an incoming hit is absorbed by a tower shield, then any resist over 35 becomes meaningless. And then next, you'll have 26 accuracy, which means you won't be fizzling any hits. You will have 8% pierce, which is a little low, but still decent. And lastly, you'll have 79% power pip chance and 56 arch mastery rating. Now to transition to my deck build that I use to get to Martial, I will quickly note that every spell I have in my deck is spell-limited, with the core strat being Winter Moon and Angry Snowpig spamming. You'll notice that I took Colossus completely out of my deck because max spell-limited Winter Moon just does more damage and has stun potential, which I think has more utility in my opinion than spell-limited Colossus. The problem with spell-limited Colossus in Grand PvP is that it's 6 pips for you to basically sacrifice 3 of your shields, which can compromise your defense in order to put 3 65% traps on your opponent. Let me pull it up. Right here. And the problem with this is that the trap stacking is easily counterable since everyone carries the Life Rochambeau spell Tranquility, which converts 3 hostile traps into an 840 heal for only 3 pips, which just essentially destroys the utility of Colossus. I may change my mind and pack 1 or 2 in the future, as it may still come in handy in situations like when your opponent is very low on pips and won't be able to negate the traps for a few turns. But I've determined that the meta strat for Ice is to just keep pressure by maintaining bubble control and essentially spamming a combination of lore spells. Now to quickly go over how to use some of these spells in ranked, starting at the top with Angry Snowpigs. The utility of the spell is just insane. It transfers a debuff charm from you to your opponent and then hits with a decent amount of damage for only 4 pips. You can use the spell defensively to transfer a weakness to your opponent, for example, or use offensively to keep pressure by transferring an infection and breaking any potential shields your opponent has on them. Obviously, put max Balefrost in to win bubble control, or to win bubble war. Snowman is good for shield breaking and can counter debuff stacked spells like Threefold Fever. Freezes are important for breaking stun shields to maximize the utility of the Winter Moon spam strategy. Frost Beetle is fantastic for shield break potential because it also puts a school-specific shield on you to maintain momentum in a fight. People typically know not to blade against ices, but sometimes you'll encounter blade stackers, and spells like Wyvern and Wall of Blades are good for removing them to gain a tactical advantage in the form of traps for Wyvern or shields from Wall of Blades. So I only have 3 blades in my main deck because a bubble buffed Winter Moon already does 1k damage, and no one is ever really going to let you hit with an open shot if you're bladed. Glacial Fortress is here to counter weakness spam and or Threefold Fever spam, which is common when fighting against deaths. Frostfeather is a fantastic shield breaker, which also switches bubble to help you win Bubble War. I could put 1 more of these in my deck, but I rarely lose Bubble War with the amount I have in currently, and I don't want to risk deck failing by putting in any more. I don't think I have to explain Steel Ward. Content creators like Awesome the Sauce can tell you all about that spell. I only have 1 Volcanic Golem because it's pointless to use against fire because of their shield removal gambits, but can be very effective against storms. I should probably add another sunblock, but 2 seems to have worked for me decently well so far. I'm able to pull them typically when I need them. I don't have too many set shields and towers in my main deck, if you'll notice, because I run a lot more in my side deck. Next, again, is the core of my strat, which is the max spell-limited Winter Moon. Tranquility and Meditation are really good at countering damage overtimes and trap stacking strategies. Putting in max satyrs is important so you can pull a heal when you need one. I typically like single infections more than Threefold Fever for my strat because it allows me to continue building pips and prevents my opponent from getting the full utility debuff counter Rochambeaus like Glacial Fortress. And lastly, 1 Steel Pip just to build momentum while preventing your opponent from being able to. Alright, so in my side deck, I run 2 Deadly Scratchers, although if you can get your hands on the 4 Pip Crocotep, it does 20 more damage, but they are incredibly rare. I like to run Frostbites in my side deck, so I can pull them when I really need them. But similarly to the issues with Spellamented Colossus, Frostbite just uses so many pips and can be easily countered with Life Rochambeaus like Meditation. 5 Pip Crocotep is really good for if you're trying to go for a 6 Pip hit and you Pip fail. Tamauji is the most solid 6 Pip treasure card damage hit and can do an insane amount of damage, even more than max Spellamented Winter Moon. So if your opponent has a ton of stun shields on them, I'd probably consider spamming Tamauji instead of Winter Moon. Although these cards are incredibly rare, so running Treasure Card Colossus is a decent substitution as well if you can't get a hold of Tamaujis. Side deck infections are important for maintaining pressure, but definitely feel free to swap these out for Contagion, because life hard counters us. I'm debating doing that myself. The Spirit and Elemental shields are really good for defensive reasons, obviously, and for setting up the Frost Beetle Gambit. I wouldn't pack more than 1 reshuffle unless you're really heavily discarding cards. And lastly, weakness. Weaknesses are super good against schools that punish shielding, like Fire, Balance, and Myth, but make sure if you use it against Myth, you have a Meditation or Tranquility in hand because of Stone Colossus and Delusion. And that is it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions about where to find anything in terms of gear, spell elements, or anything else. But that's all for now. I'll see you in the next video.